Welcome to the Just Trust the Process podcast, where faith, fortitude, and fierce determination collide to change the world. I'm bringing you the conversations that help you to trust God through the process, learn how to enjoy the process, and relax in the confidence that you will make it to your promised land. I'm your girl, Alisha J, and I'm here to help you pursue your purpose with passion and perseverance without losing your panache. So today on Just Trust the Process podcast, we have Sade Solange Cooper. Born and raised in Inglewood, California, she is a serial entrepreneur with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Mass Communications from California State University, Dominguez Hills. By day, she excels as an executive administrative professional. By night, she transforms into an imaginative event planner and digital entertainer to her Instagram followers. As a published author with a deep passion for creative writing, Sade creates stories that resonate, evoking a full range of emotions in her readers. She cherishes her roles as a loving daughter, sister, auntie, godmother, and friend. Sade is a dreamer and is in constant pursuit of adventure and experiences that set her soul on fire. All right. In spring of 2023, Sade embarked on a new chapter, becoming a resident of ATL, Georgia. Atlanta, peace up, A-Town down, L. All right. But before we welcome Sade in, let's shout out to our sponsor, Unmarried Without Children. Hello. Ladies, have you ever felt overlooked or misunderstood because you're not married or don't have children? Unmarried Without Children is the book you need. In this powerful guide, I dive into the deep, unique journey of women like us who are living out God's purpose in our own way and in our own time. Whether you're focusing on your career, your calling, or navigating the path to motherhood, Unmarried Without Children will inspire you to walk confidently in your God-given identity. And even if you're not unmarried, and even if you have children, grab a copy and read it, or give a copy to your unmarried friend with children, without children. Grab your copy today and let's thrive together right where God has you on your journey to all He has for you, including the possibility of motherhood for those who do not have children right now. And we are available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and of course, all things AlishaJ.com. So make sure you get your copy. Woo woo! All right, y'all. And so Sade, welcome to the Just Trust the Process podcast. It is so great to have you here today. I'm super excited. So please tell us a little bit more about yourself. Who is Sade?
First and foremost, I want to say thank you for having me. When you announced that you were going to pursue this endeavor, I was extremely excited about it. And I think this is my, it's the perfect time with a Christian-based, woman-to-woman, heart-to-heart conversation to start telling these stories. And I just appreciate you using your platform to get all of that across. So thank you.
Absolutely.
A little bit about,
I'm glad you're here. And thank you for reaching out. It's super exciting.
A little bit about me. So you already mentioned that I grew up in Inglewood, California. I was born and raised there. Grew up with my mother, father, and grandmother in the household. I have 3 siblings, hosts of nieces and nephews, godchildren, and friends back home. What else? I am a serial entrepreneur, as you mentioned, and I say that because throughout the course of my professional life, I've always had an additional job from my main job. So whether I was, working, a 9 to 5, well, from 6 to midnight, I was coordinating an event, or I would run as a notary public on the weekends. And then I became a published author, which drew in some income for me. I became an investor and, did some stuff in the stock market. I just started putting my money and my time and into each of my passions. And that's one word that I would use to describe myself. I'm an extremely passionate human being. I love people. I love arts. I love food. I love God. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm also single, unmarried, without children. So
come on, we got to stick together, right? Like,
yes.
Listen,
Yes.
We are waiting on you gentlemen, wherever you guys are, we're waiting on you guys to come get us. Okay. We are getting ourselves together. We are preparing for you guys. All right.
Yes.
1000%. All right. So you said you moved from California to Atlanta. Now listen, that is not like up the street, like on the same coast, like going from California to Seattle. Like you went cross the country. So is your family still in California?
Yes. So my
Oh
mother,
my gosh.
my father, my siblings, and some maternal cousins are on the West Coast in California. And literally, we're all within like 30 minutes. Well, prior to me leaving, we were all within like 30 minutes of each other. I stepped out and, walked by faith, and I left on my own. My family is still there.
Wow. And I see your t-shirt says walk, because listen, you gotta walk by faith, not by sight. In
Absolutely.
these
Walk by
streets.
faith.
Walk by faith. Okay. So you left comfort. You left stability. You left security in California to come to Atlanta. What inspired you to make that move? Because that's not like a up the like I said earlier, it's not an up the street move.
No, it's not. So, back in 2004, I attended Payne College, which is in Augusta, Georgia. And
Okay,
that was
yeah.
my introduction to the South. And when I tell you, like, that experience for me just completely opened my eyes about, Southern culture and just the different dynamics here, it completely changed my life. I was 18 years old. I went to Payne College, and I also went to college by myself. So I think I had one classmate who was there a semester, and I hardly ever saw her. And then she left, and I was still there. So it was also a solo journey for me to come from Los Angeles to Augusta, Georgia in 2004. Um, the music was like so hot back then, like Atlanta in terms of hip hop was being put on the map. I'm such a music
Yes.
fan. That excited me. Just the fact that like when you walk past different people, everyone spoke to you. So that like Southern hospitality, I got introduced to that. That was exciting. And then just overall, like the feeling of, I had some sort of stillness when I was here. Like my world moved a little bit fast when I was in LA just because of what LA is, a big city. And in Augusta, I got to take a break. So that feeling resonated with me. I came back home 18 years later, it never left. Like I just always felt like there was something
Wow.
back there for me. I made great connections. One of my best friends who we share, a mutual friend, Dominique, she and I became
Mutual
really
best
good
friend,
friends.
just to make sure the people know, it's a mutual best friend, and it's not that I share my best friends with a lot of folks. So I like Sade, so we can share this best friend today
Yes,
together. Okay.
yes. And she's I call her one of my gifts from that experience. And throughout the whole entire 18 years while I was away, we remained connected, and I would come and visit her or her grandparents. I would drive back down here. I'm sorry, I would fly back to Atlanta for various reasons. And I decided, was like, well, after the pandemic years and having that geographical separation from people who were right down the street from me, I said, this is going to be easy to go back now because I've already experienced that isolation from, my close friends in Los Angeles.
Wow. I like that you brought up the pandemic as being something that actually helped you to make this decision. Because, we talk about the pandemic, and, it's almost like it didn't happen, but it did happen. Like it almost like the pandemic graduated because it was 4 years ago, right?
Right.
So, but it's like, oh, we really were like locked up in our houses for almost like a year and a half, almost 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So how was it in that process of you thinking about moving to Atlanta, because you were still near your family in California? So you were isolated, but were you still in contact with them? Were you still seeing them as much as you could, with, of course, the restrictions that we had? And then how did you come to the conclusion that, hey, I can move out to Atlanta, this will be fine?
So that's a great question. 2020 really took a beating on me, to say the very least. And um, I have a testimony regarding all the things that I went through that year. So 2020 was extremely rough on me emotionally. It caused not only like that isolation, but separation in terms of relationships with people that to this day have not been, restored. And
Wow.
that kind of added to how I was feeling, just alone. I had a group of friends who every Friday, as often as we could, we would get on virtually, and it would be 7 or 8 of us at a time, and just constantly doing
Good.
check-ins, and we would call it Friendship Fridays, and we would just check in. But even that, to me, I felt I was the only one that either didn't have a pet in my home with me. I did not have a roommate at that time. I did not have a spouse or a partner that was living with me. I had no siblings, no family members in my home. So oftentimes I would be on the Zoom and I would see myself, and everyone else had someone to cohabitate with during the pandemic. And it further just encouraged me, like, if I can be this close to people and still feel by
Yeah.
myself, I can go far away. And,
Yeah.
like, and that just kind of propelled me. Like, I felt like I had done it before, which I had when I was 18, but this time it was different because I actually had relationship separations from a lot of people. And yeah, my family, we saw each other as often as we could. Los Angeles experienced a lockdown like no other. We were really like curfew, and you couldn't gather with more than, like, I think at one point it was 5 people, then it was 10 people. They had,
Hmm.
sort of like martial law enforced there, where there was just,
Yeah.
people policing what your activity was going to be. And, to the best of our abilities, we just abided by the rules, and I stayed in my zone.
Yeah. 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 I remember those days, not being able to really get out and, church for us was like you could only have 10 people at a time. And so it was just the essentials. Like you had a pianist. I think at one time we couldn't even have the piano player. Like we just had the singing to tracks. So I remember that time. So you talked about um being isolated, right? So what were the emotions and the feelings that you were feeling in that moment of being by yourself?
Oh, it's very hard to even like talk about that because it was very depressing. I actually
Mm.
self-diagnosed myself with depression because there was days where I couldn't get up out of my bed. I didn't
Yeah.
want to do anything. I was operating as a notary because event planning had, went on hiatus due to
Right, right.
the pandemic. So I wasn't able to like be around people and plan events and, have all this activity and personal connection and that energy that I feed off of. So like there were days where I would sit in bed and not bathe, not want to answer my phone, not talk. I was also going through my first heartbreak during the pandemic, and it completely shattered me. Like I literally had nothing but the Lord to lean on. I
Yeah.
I lost everything but my faith. I felt like during the time of the pandemic. So yeah, that's what I felt: sadness, depression. I felt darkness. I felt alone. I felt um, just I felt small. I felt very
Yeah.
very small.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. That's heartbreaking to hear, of course. And glad that you're on the other side of that, right?
Yes.
And glad that you had faith because I've heard, I don't know how people live without God because listen, those trials and tribulations, they hit different when you have someone that you can go talk to and be like, "Hey God, yo, this is very uncomfortable for your girl." So, I'm glad you had that. And even though you didn't have someone in the home with you, you still were able to reach out to your village. So how often, even in those days where you couldn't get out of bed, because depression is real, even with people who are believers, depression, it doesn't um just because we're believers doesn't mean that we don't get hit with anxiety and depression and those type of emotions. So when you were going through that season, did you reach out to your family? Were you able to get some kind of consolation during that time?
So it took about a year and a half for me to escape that feeling. Um,
Mm.
I'm grateful, thankful. Like God truly blessed me with the best village, hands down. Like my
Yes, praise
friends,
God.
are the absolute best friends that you could ever have, that anyone can ever have. And I share them with as many people as I possibly can. during this time where I felt the separation, yes, my family was aware of it. My church family was aware of it. My close friends were aware of it. People prayed for me. They came by my house to make sure I was eating. Um,
Good.
they would FaceTime me or just send me things to just kind of brighten my day. I had to spend one of my birthdays in the pandemic, and I'm a huge like celebrating. I just love to celebrate. So
Yeah.
that got to me having to celebrate my birthday virtually. But even then, 60 plus people showed up on this Zoom party that we had, and that became a
Oh,
magical thing. So again, my village always steps in for me, and without them, without the affirmations that I would say to myself, I would not have been able to get out of that period at all. Like, I would not have been able to have a testimony today saying that I crawled out of that. So I definitely reached out. Everyone was very supportive, and then there's some people who recognized it as this is my time to just kind of stay away. I actually sent a text message to a group of people, and they were so worried. It was like prayer time. What do you need? But then some people are like,
yeah.
you know what? She needs space. She needs
Yeah.
time to just kind
Yeah.
of go through this um, season. And when she's ready again, she'll reach out. But I had a lot of people praying for me.
Praise God. Listen, the power of prayer, people. Let me tell you, the power of prayer. Okay, it is unmatched when
Yes,
you are praying to the right God, which is God Almighty, Jesus Christ, Holy Spirit, right? So
yes.
we thank God for that. Um, so you talk about your faith in God. You talk about how that got you through the season. So in the midst of this season, was God talking to you about moving to Atlanta? Or was this just something that you just had a desire to do?
So it wasn't until I eventually, like I said, it was about a year and a half that I was going through this dark phase of my life, and it was summer of 2021. I'm sorry, back up. It was the end of 2022. I'm sorry, back up again. It was December
That's
of
all right.
2020 where I made an announcement on Facebook, and I said, you know what, for my birthday next year, I don't want any gifts. I don't want to throw a party. Of course, I wasn't going to be able to, but I want people to pour into me a financial blessing that will allow me an opportunity to write a book. I am seeking, help to raise money for a publishing company. I would appreciate any donations towards that goal of mine. I met my goal in January 2021. I hired a publishing company, and I spent 6 months, 6.5 months writing my first book. And God spoke to me during that phase, most
Wow.
definitely. Not to move to Atlanta, but I use that book writing experience as a form of narrative therapy just to get me through what I was currently experiencing. I did not write about, but writing about the stories that I told from my past helped me to feel like I was in a different place. It put me, and that's the gift of storytelling, is that like you can just transfer or teleport um, to a different place with these stories. So writing about, when I was a child and all these happy things, or growing up in church, or how I became an event planner, and all these things, like it made me feel a sense of joy that ultimately like helped to transform me out of that. Um, right after this experience of writing this book, um, I felt like I had this extreme high. I felt so accomplished, like now I've written this book.
Yeah.
I've done a lot
Yeah.
in LA. I've lived a full life here. I've touched a lot of people in terms of just like having this impact and sharing my spirit, my energy with all of these people here. I said I feel like I've kind of outgrown it after this book release party that I had. I felt like there's nothing that can top that. There was no high that can match what I was feeling, and that's when I was like, well,
Wow.
Atlanta is Atlanta's still there. There's still that place in my heart
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
wants me to be there. And I had actually, the summer of 2021, I came out to an old college roommate's wedding, who was also, she got married down in Augusta. I drove down to
Okay.
Atlanta during that time, and I tell everybody that the trees here, they literally speak to me. I heard
Mm.
those trees, like, it was like they were telling me, come back. come back. The trees are
Wow.
just glowing, and it's just so beautiful here. Geography wise, like you guys have way more green than Los Angeles does. So like I
Yeah.
just look up and I see all these trees and I feel like I breathe better here. There were so
Yeah.
many things that came into making the decision, but God definitely spoke to me and ordered my steps throughout that whole process.
Oh, I love that. And yeah, I've heard this before from people from California. When I went to college and actually encountered my first set of Californians. First of all, they were like, the humidity is killing our hair. And then the second thing was they had never seen the leaves change on the trees.
I
And
never seen it
so
either.
yeah, so
It's so
I'm from Georgia,
beautiful.
so I'm like, this is normal. And so when they saw the leaves change, they were like, what's happening to the tree? And I was like, it's dying. And so it's getting ready for winter. And they were like, oh my gosh. So, they were outside taking pictures. Some of them had never seen snow. So when we got the little bit of snow that we got, they were wanted to be outside and in the snow. So um when you're used to something, it's like refreshing to see people who see things for the first time, right?
Yeah.
So totally can understand that you were like, oh my gosh, the trees. And I love fall. Fall is my favorite time of the year because the trees are so beautiful and they just turn these beautiful colors, and it's unmatched. I can't say I have never been anywhere else where I can see the colors of fall the way I've seen them. But we're going to take a quick break to
Okay.
shout out our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by All Things Alisha J, your one-stop shop for inspiration, empowerment, and all things fabulous. Whether you're looking for motivational content to uplift your spirit, makeup tips and tricks, or resources to help you navigate life's challenges with confidence, All Things Alisha J has got you covered. Visit allthingsalisha.com today and join the community of women walking in their God-given purpose, one fabulous step at a time. Thank you, All Things Alisha J. Appreciate you, girl. All right, so it's kind of weird, like thanking yourself. It is, but you gotta love it. All right, so Sade, you talked about how God um inspired you to move here to Atlanta. Did you have a plan when you decided, okay, I'm going to move? So you wrote the book, you got the inspiration, I'm coming to Atlanta. What was the plan? Or was there a plan? Or was it just you know what, we just going to pack up this day and I'm out?
So I'm an extreme planner. I've planned everything in my life. I wrote in my book about feeling like I planned my birth. Like when my mom gave birth to me, that's how
I
um,
love it.
deep into this planning that I am. I hardly leave my house without planning how I'm getting from point A to point B and what I need to take. Like that's just my brain is just constantly thinking of next steps and logistical things. So um, after coming to Atlanta July 2021 for the wedding, the Augusta area for the wedding, I said, well, what does this really look like for me? What does a move to Atlanta look like? I know for one that the cost of living is less. That's just something that everybody knows. So that's
Yep.
nothing that I had to research. I knew that I had a lot of money saved and I was making a lot of money in Los Angeles. So um, I would be able to transfer, and be okay had I not, landed a job. I was thinking of ways to get out here without a job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just, I started planning like what my life, I just started kind of thinking about what my life would look like in Atlanta. And then my first plan of action was to try to find a job. Like, let me just apply. It took
Okay.
over 8 months of me applying to, various businesses. I was looking into everything from event planning to operations, executive administration, which is what I've been doing for a few years, to how I can even be an entrepreneur in Atlanta and just kind of come over
Mm-hmm.
here and hit the ground running. Ultimately, I did land a full-time position, and within 10 days of me um, getting the call that, yes, we would like to move forward with your candidacy, I packed up and moved. Now, there's like a lot that comes within that 10 days, which I can't wait to speak about. But just generally, there was not much for me to sort out. And that's because like I was familiar. I actually had a few friends that lived down here, so they were helping me to find locations close to where this company was located. So geographically, I wouldn't have to like commute very far, and I can learn the area that I was in relatively quickly. So I had people like on the ground in Atlanta, Georgia, kind of helping me to decide on an area for housing. I knew, like I said, financially in California, my rent was $2,200. So anything under $2,200, I was like, I'll be okay. I can survive. I know how to manage $2,200 with
Yeah.
utilities and all that stuff. It was not a problem. So I come here and I'm like, as long as it's under $2,200, I should be good. And that's kind of where it started. First was secure employment. Second was housing. And I spent majority of the time just focusing on like Atlanta before I started thinking about, okay, you still have to leave this place. Stop
Right.
focusing on
Yeah.
what's going to be when you're there, but you still have to leave. So that was a different thought process and feeling behind the leaving part.
Wow. Okay. So you did have a legitimate plan. So tell us about these 10 days, because now I want to know what happened in these 10 days, because you got me excited. So what
Oh
happened in
my
those 10 days?
gosh. So this is where I need to refer to my notes just to take a quick, I first wanted to, the first thing that I want to say about this 10 day, and this is where I'm going to start to get emotional, is that, whew, like Inglewood is where I was born and raised. So
Yeah. Yeah.
leaving is like, it's kind of like you're leaving a piece of your childhood. You're leaving just like a staple in who you are as a person. And
Yeah.
I like to use this time to read an excerpt from my book just about how I describe my love for Inglewood.
Yeah.
I'm
Absolutely.
going to do that real quick, and then I'll tell you about these 10 days. So um, it's chapter 3, No Place Like Home. I was born and raised in the beautiful city of Champions, Inglewood, California. It's a special place and has a unique soundtrack. The ice cream truck tunes, the paletero man, the neighborhood dogs barking, always on continuous play. Add the first responder sirens and the year-round fireworks, sometimes gunshots, and now you've heard the remix. And it's always 70 degrees. It has a scent of glazed donuts, street tacos, laundromat detergent, engine oil, McDonald's French fries, and sometimes fertilizer. The city is iconic for so many reasons. The Hollywood Park Casino, which is a former racetrack, the Great Western Forum, where the Los Angeles Lakers played back in the day, countless mentions in rap songs, and the setting of many classic films. But it represents so much more to me. The city captured the first breaths and moments of many people who became pieces to my puzzle. It is the birthplace of my biggest fears and wildest dreams. Looking back, it's arguably the first non human that I pledged my allegiance to. Each city that makes up Los Angeles County has its own flavor, so Inglewood should never be mistaken for one of them. It's an extraordinary place. It's my home.
Oh, I love that. Yes. I was sitting there, I was smelling the street cars and the fertilizer, and I'm just smelling everything. I love it. Yes.
So, my friendships, my family, I had to let them know. First of all, it was like, how do I make this announcement? Do I send text messages? Do I FaceTime? Do I invite everybody to a Zoom? Because I'm grateful to have a lot of people who genuinely care about me, what I
Mhm.
do with my life, if I'm healthy, emotionally, physically. There's a lot of people who genuinely care about me. And I said, well, I'm going to send a mass text first. Of course, I'm going to call my parents and tell them. And I think I sent a couple of messages through a group chat, and then I finally made my announcement on Facebook and Instagram. And that was when like my phone starts blowing up, like, no
I know
way.
it
And I'm like,
was.
yes way. And in the same breath of me making this announcement, I also need y'all help packing because I have to be there in 10 days. So can we do this moving? Like, can we do a moving?
Right. It's a going away moving party. Let's go.
Yes, like I don't even have time really to process what I just said to you guys. but I need y'all to bring y'all boxes and bags and come over here and help me. And that's kind of how it went down. So like for the next 5 days, I would say,
Wow.
as I'm, packing, friends are coming over, they're bringing me gifts, they're bringing their children, we're crying, we're, memories, and they're helping me pack boxes. They're taking my washer and dryer because there was a lot of things that I didn't want to take with me, just for the simple fact is that when I eventually booked my apartment, I was going to have all of my appliances there. So I didn't need a microwave or washer and dryer. I didn't need a lot of the things that I had moved into the apartment that I was living at in Los Angeles. So I just kind of had hey, like, take whatever you need. I didn't sell anything. I had people come in and, take my bed, take my patio furniture, whatever they needed, like, just take it. I actually had 2 beds at the time. So, it was not difficult for me deciding like what stays and what goes. Ultimately, like, I had a new couch, I had a new bed. I'm taking those with me. But all the little knickknacks, my kitchen supplies, I was like, just come and take this stuff. I'll donate it. I'll get rid of it. So for the first couple of days, people were in shock, but immediately went into action. Everyone was like, okay, when do you need me? Or me and my daughter come in and we're going to help you do this. Or do you need money? Or do you need this? And do you need that? No, just need your physical presence. I had people coming to pray over me. I had, like family members that live in Florida on my dad's side calling me, my New York side, which is my mom's side, calling me like, are you sure you want to do this? And it was very exciting. I felt the joy in it. I only felt excitement and joy. There was no sadness whatsoever those first couple of days.
I love that.
I was also like, I'm very just adamant about things happening in a certain order and the way I feel like it was supposed to go. So I'm like, in the midst of like, hey, come help me pack, I'm calling the coordinating the pods to come. I use a pod company to come in and deliver this, storage container and, put my stuff in. I had a friend who was in town who coincidentally helped me move into the apartment that I was living in. He came into town that weekend and he helped me to unload the stuff that I was taking out of my apartment and put it into my pod. So I had a village. I had a village to help me around that. One of the first things that happened during, these 10 days was that I was told by the city that the pod could not be there without a permit. And in order to get a permit, I needed 7 days for them to process and approve my application for a permit.
Hey,
I had at that point, I was moving so fast. I think I had less than 2 days. I probably had like a day and a half business, like in terms of business hours, I probably had a day and a half to get a permit. And I said, well, how am I going to do this? I said, you know what? I'm calling, I'm emailing, I'm whoever is the higher up. I need to speak to them because I have less than 24 hours. This pod that I've already paid for, it's going to be parked in front of this apartment complex, permit or not. So please help me. And I was able to get in touch with somebody the very next day. She sent me an application, collected my fee and said, we can approve it. We can like express approve it.
And what made us say 7 days? God said 24 hours. Done.
When I tell you. So I threw a few parties, like going away parties. I had one at like a lounge where one of my favorite DJs was going to be playing that night. So in the midst of me planning, I said, you know what, I need to take this time and just kind of celebrate with my people. So I did that. A couple of days later, a few of my friends from that event came to my house to help me pack up. And while we're upstairs, my car is parked outside and someone hits my car. Smacks dead into the back of my car. And like kind of, you see the visible damage to the frame, like the frame that's right around the back tire. There was like extensive damage there.
And this is how many days before you have to move?
This is 3 days. I drove across country. I needed that car. This was 3 days. In the afternoon, early afternoon, 3 days before I left, someone hit the back of my car.
And you didn't get it fixed in California. You drove with the what?
So the friends that I previously celebrated with that were upstairs with me when all of this happened came downstairs with me. I didn't know that my car was hit because my view of the car was from this side and there was no damage on this side. When
Yeah.
I walked around and saw it, I was like, oh my gosh. One of my friends, she said, Sade, there's like a note or something on the front windshield. I passed that. I was so concerned with this damage. I didn't even look at my windshield. How
Wow.
about I open the note? It's a lady's name and her number. It was an older senior citizen lady. She hit my car. She couldn't find out who owned it, so she left her name and number. And
I
within
love that.
24 hours, she transferred me a significant amount of money to cover the damages.
Come on. Let no man put us under. I know that's talking about marriage, but when God is making a way, it doesn't matter what the devil is throwing at you. He gonna
No.
make sure his children are taken care of. Oh my God.
Yes. So
Listen.
so in addition to me, like, so I didn't have to go back and forth about the payment or anything. She just wanted me to get a
Right.
quote.
Most people, you gotta go back and forth with the insurance company. That takes months. You got lawyers involved. You sitting here trying to get your money. Like, listen.
So
She was like, what
oh,
I
yeah.
do? This is what I love about mature people who are wise. She already knew it was gonna be back and forth. Listen, because had that been somebody our age, the insurance company would have been involved. But anyway, that's just my soapbox. I'm getting off of it. Uh,
So yeah, I went to, ultimately I still had to go to a mechanic auto body shop to see if the
Absolutely.
damages were going to prevent me from being able to drive. So that
Mm-hmm.
was a blessing because at this point I spent over $4,000 already just preparing to move. Between,
Right,
I
right.
did hire a little bit of help with like furniture.
Yeah.
So I hired people to move my furniture out of my building. That cost money. The pod was a couple $1,000s. Um, Celebrating was, some money there, and then just getting all the supplies that I needed to pack up. That was running me some money. So I went to
Did
the auto
did
mechanic
the
shop.
company contribute to that? Did you get moving costs with the company that
Yes,
you? Okay, good. That's
yes.
good.
So relocation was a part of that. It was limited, but it was able to cover the majority of the expenses that I had. So like once I
Good.
traveled, the gas, the pod cost, and then even one night hotel because I wasn't able to move into my apartment when I first got to Georgia. So
Okay,
yeah.
that's good.
Um, so yeah, I go to the mechanic shop. He lifts my car up, and I'm willing to pay whatever I have to because my safety is what I'm concerned about at this point. Can I drive
Right,
this car 2,000 miles from Los Angeles to Georgia? And he
right.
lifts up my car. He does a test. He drives it around. He checks the frame, and he says you have no significant the damage is not going to prevent you from being able to drive. And he didn't charge me for the inspection.
What? Look, yeah, God. And you got to check, honey.
Oh, I mean, I eventually got it when I moved to Georgia about a couple of months in. There's a lot of accidents out here, so I had to
Yeah.
wait 2 full months before my car was able to be serviced. But
Okay.
eventually, I did use that money to cover it. Covered a rental car and it covered um, the time that my car was being serviced, and they completely fixed it back to normal eventually. So,
Look, I love it.
yeah.
This story is amazing. Oh my gosh. So them 10 days, listen. It's like, oh, we moving and shaking. I see your faith. You working your faith. I'm gonna open up all these doors for you because I see where you going. I got you.
Now
Come on, God. This is what I love to hear.
there's
Oh, we
one
got this.
more,
Okay, hold on.
one
Wait a
more
minute.
thing.
I wish I had some tea. Where's my tea
Take a water
at?
There's one more thing that happened. So the pod company, you have up to 30 days to have this storage unit in your, you have like I chose a 30-day rental, which means from the time they deliver it to the time it's being transported, if you have to house it once it makes it to its location and then delivery, that entire process, you can only have your pod for 30 days.
Okay.
Because it was going to take me at least 3 days to get to Georgia, I knew that when I got there, it was going to be on either Saturday or Sunday. And then that following Monday and Tuesday, I needed to check in with the lease office, see what their their requirements were for where it can be parked. There were so many things that needed to be done. I had to strategically have that pod picked up at a certain day, certain time,
Right.
or I would miss the unloading part because I had to hire people to unload, coordinate with the leasing office. All of that had to be at a set time. Whether my
Right.
pod was there or not, I'm paying and coordinating for things to happen. I had a friend that was flying out from Texas to be in Georgia to help me. So like that pod had
Wow.
to be there on that Tuesday, the 10th or 11th of April, whatever day that was.
Yeah.
Well, in order for it to get there, it had to be picked up from Los Angeles at a certain time. The night before, the pod company suggests, put cones down in front and behind the pod so nobody can park around it. Make sure, you have this, that, and the fourth in place so that when we come, it's easy in, easy out. It shouldn't take longer than 20 minutes to pick up this pod. Great, cool.
Right.
Well, the night before, I also had another going away party. So I met up with my friends and family, and we had a dinner together. And, that was a huge event. And I completely forgot to make sure there was something securing that space in front and behind the pod. I didn't put too much thought into it because there was so many different things going on at the same time. I was like, ain't nobody parking in front of that pod. Well, on the day that the pod company came and picked it up, there was a car parked in front of that pod. And when I tell you, I lived on a street where there were 2 apartment complexes, at least 60 units in each apartment complex, no assigned parking on the street, and residents all around, homeowners. So like on a weekend, you're going to have company. There was no telling who that car belonged to unless you had like an officer, driving around that was going to run the plate. There was no telling who that car belonged to. So the guy comes, he calls in advance and he says, I'm on my way. And I was like, well, maybe there's a little space and he can make it work. So I'm not even going to tell him that there's a car parked here. And when he gets here, no, I'm not going to tell, I'll let him figure it out. When he arrived, he looked at it and he said, there's no way I'm going to be able to pull that pod out without hitting that car. You need to find the owner of this car and you need to, there's no way I can do it. So I was like, there's no way that I can find the owner of this car. Like, we're on a very long street.
Yeah.
Parking is very scarce in a lot of these, apartment areas. So this person can be somewhere around the corner and they just parked here, because there was literally no parking. So they parked in front of this pod because they couldn't find parking anywhere else.
Right.
So he said, well, I'll try. He tried to maneuver it, but if that pod made of steel, metal, shifts a little bit too much.
It's going to damage somebody's car. Yeah.
So he gave up. He was like, I can't do it. So I was like, can you honk your horn and put an emergency siren or something on so that, people can realize that you're trying to, get this device out and stuff. And he said, yeah. So he started honking. He probably honked for 10 minutes straight. Nobody came outside. There was people walking their dogs. And I would say, hey, does this car belong to you? Do you know who this car belongs to? No one knew whose car it was. He had an alarm on his truck and it started going off. And then his supervisor called him and said, what is taking you so long? Because they have trackers and timers to pick up different devices.
Other pods. Yeah.
So he said, I have to go. He said, I can't stay and wait because, I have other pods that I have to pick up. They then either go on shipping containers or they go on trucks, but they have a schedule to meet. So he said, I gotta go. He said, the next day I can come pick it up is Monday. It was Saturday. I said, I can't wait until Monday. And he drove off. He gave me his telephone number and he drove off. He said, if you want to speak to my manager about it or something, he was like, but we can't physically move this out of this space. No. So I started crying. I got on Instagram and I'm crying and I'm showing everybody the car. And I don't know if anybody knows,
please,
the owner of this car. I'm just desperate at this point.
Right.
I was like, you know what? I'll start with my apartment complex and I'm just going to knock on every door until somebody comes out and says, this is it. I was determined.
Sade, you was about to risk your life. You was risking it all.
I lived in a very good neighborhood and I became facial familiar with a lot of my neighbors. So I'm knocking and do you know whose car this is? Do you know whose car this is? it was about my fifth door. I decided not to use the first and second floors because I know who those people are and I know their cars. So I was like, process of elimination, I'm not going to waste my time on the first and second floor. And majority of us park in our garage. So this has to be, I don't know. Just was like, I'm going to find this person, but I'm not going to spend my time on the first and second floor. I go to the third floor, skip the first door, knocked on the second door. They said no. Knocked on the third door. The lady answered. And I said, do you know whose car this is? Like, it probably had been about 7 to 10 minutes since the guy in the truck left.
Yeah.
She said, oh, yeah. She's like, that's actually my boyfriend's car. He's in there asleep.
You were like, I wish I had thought about this earlier.
Please wake him up. She was like, oh, I'll just go get the keys and move it for you. As she's getting the keys and coming downstairs, I'm calling the truck and he's like, I can't come back. Like, I can't come back. And I said, well, what's your supervisor's number? I called the supervisor. Supervisor told him to come back and get my pod, and it got picked up on time on Saturday.
Oh, God. Come on. Yes. Listen, look at God. God is just showing out for you. And then your pod made it on time. Y'all moved in good. So we have gone through all the wonderful things that God has done for you. The favor on your life is amazingly heavy. Okay. You get to Atlanta. What happens in that first month of you being in Atlanta? You move in. I'm sure the move was kind of, a lot of logistics going on. But what happened in that first month of you being in Atlanta?
So the first month was, I was still moving at the speed of light, like I did not have time to sit with everything that happened. But there was one moment where I had a virtual housewarming because I'd given a lot of stuff away. I gave like cups, forks, like that stuff I just didn't feel like taking with me. I was like, I'll start over. And I had a virtual housewarming, and it was the day that I was opening up all of the gifts that I had received via Amazon. And people would leave, or the people who were helping me pack, they would sneak notes into the boxes when they were packing.
Oh.
And when I sat there and just opened up all the gifts from people and their little notes that they left, or as I'm unpacking, I'm reading the little notes that they, I'm gonna miss you, best of luck, God bless you. Like, that's when it really hit me. Woo!
I know that like hit you so hard.
It was tough. Like, then I got to sit with it a little bit. So I'm like, I left. Before I left, I spent a lot of time with my nieces and nephews and my godchildren because they're babies, like you don't really have, well, they were age range between like my godson hadn't even turned 1 yet. So he's the youngest. And then my niece and nephew were turning 15 that summer. So they, there was quite a difference in ages there, but I wanted to spend time with each of them while I was, before I left. Yeah. And I spent time with my niece and nephew. I took them shopping. We went to lunch, and then we went to go watch a movie. We were together from 2:00 in the afternoon until 1:00 in the morning. And these are kids that like I've been with since they were born. So at the age of 15, we have a really solid relationship with each other. And my nephew asked me when we were sitting down eating, he said, well, if you love us so much, why are you going to leave? And it hurt to hear. For one, there's a lot of maturity in that question. But I didn't even know how to answer a question like that. To tell someone that I love dearly, who I helped raise, who is like a son to me, that I'm moving because it's a personal choice and this is like a spiritual journey that I'm on. Every part of this has been ordained by God, and I couldn't explain that to him. But like I started to have those moments once I got to Atlanta that like I miss these kids. What am I doing? Like it was rough after those feelings set in. But joy overall was it took up the highest percentage of feelings. If you were to like quantify all of my feelings, I would say that joy was the biggest thing that I felt for the longest period of time.
And that's real. Like you know, you can, it's, if you have parents and adults that, and friends, it's hard to leave them, but it's a little bit easier than leaving a kid. Cause kids, they're pulling at your heartstrings and, they may not understand what's happening. And you're like, I'm going to miss some of the monumental, events that are going on in their lives, things that you might not be able to do because you can't fly back, that often. So that is a big chunk of, things that you have to consider when you're moving, right? And
Yeah,
so now that you're here in Atlanta, you've been here 2 years now, almost 2 years. Has it been 2 years?
like 16 months.
16 months. Okay, so we're almost there.
Yeah.
How has that looked? How has that transition looked? I know that it's probably been some sort of a roller coaster.
Oh yeah, indeed. It looked like discovering that some, friendships weren't as solid as you thought they were.
Mm,
It looked like missing knowing everything about where you come from because now you know nothing about where you are.
yeah.
Um, Familiarity is golden.
You're telling the truth, and the vulnerability of moving from your comfort zone into a place where it's like, okay, this is where I want to be, but not um it's not as secure as what I left just yet. And that is the truth about trusting the journey, right? It's trusting the process and trusting that God is going to lead you through everything, and it's going to end up being where you want it to be. And so, Sade, I want to thank you so much for your story of telling us about moving, because I'm considering moving myself. So maybe not to California, but but just the things that you have to think about when you're leaving your home state, and um what you need to be prepared for, I'm sure is going to help someone who's on the cusp of trusting God to move from wherever they are to a new city or a new state or even a new country, because that's a huge life moment. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you so much. I want to know where people can find you, where they can buy your book. Tell us the title of your book. Let us know all of those things.
Thank you, Alisha J, for having me. To all of your listeners and audience members, if you want to connect with me, I'm on Instagram at Miss Cooper, MISSC00PER. That is also where you can contact me for a copy of my book, Hidden Behind My Smile. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Sade. This was a wonderful, wonderful conversation that we had with her. And again, her wisdom and experiences are truly going to inspire us and uplift us all going forward. And of course, a special shout out to our amazing sponsors, All Things Alisha J, your one-stop shop for everything you need to stay empowered and fabulous. And the book, Unmarried Without Children, a must-read for anyone navigating life's journey, grace and purpose. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, as we walk this path of purpose, trust the process, stay rooted in faith, and know that God's timing is perfect. Until next time, keep shining, keep smiling, knowing that we are here for you and knowing that God has you in his hands. Thank you so much, and y'all have a blessed one.